Deep in the birch forests of Eastern Europe lives a people who are unafraid of the dark. They've never heard of such a thing as a vampire, werewolf, or an evil spirit that preys on the blood of the living. But if you ask them about the Rusalki, the spirits of drowned maidens that linger in the mist near rivers and swamps, they will tell you it's best not to listen too closely to the voice calling your name. In Slavic folklore, the Rusalki are water spirits that lure unsuspecting men to their doom. They're beautiful and deadly, like the sirens of Greek mythology, except instead of half-fish tails, they have long flowing hair and the face of a young girl. And instead of singing to sailors on rocky shores, they haunt marshes and slow-moving streams where tall grasses whisper secrets to the wind. It's there in the reeds by the water that the Rusalki make their lairs, hiding from the light of day and preying on those who hear their mournful cries. These farce maidens were once human. Their stories go back hundreds of years to a time when women's voices could be dangerous things. If a woman spoke up in a village meeting, her opinion was considered out of order. If a woman owned property, she could be put to death for practicing witchcraft. And if a woman dared to love someone other than the man her father chose for her, she was often left with only two options: silence or an early grave. For centuries, women's voices were stifled and their cries for help went unheard. That is until now, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the fireflies came out to play. The Rusalki would rise up from their watery graves and wander the land as beautiful, ethereal beings, no longer bound by the rules of the living. They roamed free through the night, their presence heralded by the buzzing of mosquitoes and the croaking of frogs. Sometimes they'd stop to gaze at the moon and the stars, remembering a time before their deaths when the world had seemed full of endless possibilities. Other times they'd let out a long, mournful cry that echoed through the silent trees. And it was this sound above all others that set the villagers' teeth on edge, for it reminded them of their own buried sorrows. Some say the Rusalki are demons, fallen angels sent to do the bidding of the devil. Others say they are the spirits of girls who drowned after being jilted at the altar, left behind by the men who never returned from war, or abandoned by their own families who were ashamed of their daughters' illnesses. Whatever their origins, the Rusalki were feared throughout Eastern Europe. They were blamed for crop failures and sick children, and some villages even built wooden effigies of the Rusalki and paraded them through the streets, beating them with sticks and making offerings of fruit and wine to appease their restless spirits. But not everyone was afraid of the Rusalki in the old days. There was a special initiation ritual for young men that involved drinking a magic potion and then venturing into the forest alone. The potion gave them the power to see the Rusalki, and if they could remain calm in the face of such an earthly beauty, they were considered brave enough to become warriors. Of course, most young men couldn't resist the temptation to touch a Rusalka's hair or feel her cold, wet skin beneath their fingers, and they'd often end up drowning in the river or lost in the swamp, never to be seen again. As the centuries passed, the Rusalki became less frightening and more romantic. In modern tales, they're usually depicted as sad, lonely creatures who only want to be heard. Some say they're not dangerous at all, just misunderstood. But don't take the chance. If you hear a strange, sweet song coming from the marsh tonight, don't go to investigate. Just remember what the old folks used to say, and keep your distance from any maidens with long, wet hair. After all, you can never be too careful when it comes to spirits that live in the water. They're beautiful and deadly, like the sirens of Greek mythology.